welcome, welcome. This is another episode of Take Fountain. I'm here with Thom, as always. Today's particularly special for me. I know I say that every time, but it's particularly special for me because I've booked. It was very difficult. I booked a very close friend of mine, who also happens to be a powerhouse, or was a powerhouse for many years in the world of television. Phyllis McGrady. If you don't know who Phyllis McGrady is, let me tell you. She was executive producer of Good Morning America for a while. She was an executive producer of the Barbara Walters specials for a while. She was a vice president, I think it was, at ABC News for a while. She did put, what were those shows, like Turning Point and, what was it, Primetime Live on the air. Lots and lots of things. She is, what? What?
What would you do with John Quinones?
There you go. That's, which was a huge show. And still, they're still doing some of those, aren't they? Anyway.
Well, yeah.
Well, yes, the short answer is yes. Anyway, thank you, Phyllis, for being with us. We're here today specifically, even though you've had this big career, we're here today specifically to talk about the Barbara Walters specials because that's the thing that people bug me about all the time, and I don't want to just sit here alone and talk about them. Because Thom says, oh, I'll just ask you about the Barbara Walters specials. I said, well, can we get... The reason I was the executive producer of the Barbara Walters special. By the way, I stopped talking eventually, Phyllis. The reason I was the executive producer of the Barbara Walters specials is because Phyllis set me up for that. That's how I got the job. I will tell all of that in great detail, it's a really, actually, if I do say so myself, a pretty interesting story. But let's start before that. Let's start with how is it that you became and by the way, you're coming to us from lovely Florida. I should set this all up properly. How is it that you got to know Barbara and ultimately ended up running her shows?
Well, I originally got to know her from, I was a writer producer, then a senior producer and field producer, and then executive producer of Good Morning America at different times. And I originally got to know her just because I would pre-interview her when I was a writer-producer. She was going to be on the show to promote something. So we sort of just very, very casually knew each other. And then I moved to Toronto for a boyfriend. And because of that, I started doing field producing for all kinds of different shows. And I field produced a lot of pieces for 2020. And we were lucky enough to win an Emmy for one of them. And these were with different people, not with Barbara Walters whatsoever. So right. I didn't work with her at all. And then the 1980 Democratic Convention was coming about. And I got a call from Ov Weston, who at that time was executive producer of 2020. And they were putting together programming around the convention in which they were going to be doing interesting political pieces. And he asked me if I would produce pieces for Barbara Walters. Now, later I felt, why wouldn't they ask a 2020 producer?
Sure.
But probably because she had gotten pissed off at everybody. Who knows why they asked this freelancer. So I flew down to have a meeting. I was outside of Barbara's office as Ov Weston goes into the office. And I hear Barbara say, what in the world and who in the world is Phyllis McGrady? And, you're sort of sitting out there I'm Phyllis McGrady. So I walk in and I say, Barbara, we have sort of known each other. And we did stuff on Good Morning America. And she was like, whatever. But anyway, she and I then did produce 3 pieces for the Democratic Convention. They were well received. And she asked me at that time, would I think about doing the specials? But I was with the boyfriend, all the reasons one should never make decisions. And we had just moved to Toronto, and I didn't feel at that time that I could take the job. I then left the boyfriend, became executive producer of Good Morning America, and she and I were together. I've been on Good Morning America, and of course, that's where I got to know you, Bill.
Right.
And we're doing many, many things.
Yes.
And Barbara and I were on our way I was going with her. She was going to be appearing for us, probably to promote a special or something on Good Morning America. And she and I were sitting next to each other. It was probably 6 o'clock in the morning. And she said, I'm going to ask you again. And after all those years of 3:30 in the morning alarm clocks, I really said, yes. Yes. I said, no hesitation, no nothing. Yes. And so that summer. I had to continue until September in order to finish a bunch of projects with Good Morning America, some projects we had. And then I had to deliver my first special that December.
Do you remember, what was that first special? I've forgotten what. Do you remember what it was?
The first the first special was, we were sort of thinking, let's do one music, one TV, and one film. So the first special, who it was supposed to be, and it turned out to be somebody else. I'll tell you the story. It was supposed to be Lionel Richie, who at that time had just, he was big, huge, all night long and dancing on the ceiling.
Yes.
And he had just, We Are the World. And, it was a huge thing. So we did him, and we did Betty White, who of course was huge at that time with the Golden Girls. And the third person was supposed to be Michael Douglas. And in fact, we did shoot with Michael Douglas. We shot him at his home. We shot him playing tennis with Jan Wenner. We shot him on the set for 2 days on Fatal Attraction on the set. And this was, prior to that movie coming out, but he was supposed to be the guest. And while we were in Los Angeles doing Betty White, Barbara gets a call directly from Richard Pryor. And Richard Pryor, she had done, previously, and she had done Richard Pryor after his horrible accident, which he said was an accident, which was obviously him freebasing. And he said, I really want to talk to you. There are things I wanted to say to you 4 years ago when we did that interview, where he kind of lied, or did lie.
Yes.
And I'm assuming he was in AA at that point. He'd been sober for 3 or 4 years. So I think this was probably a process of something that AA or whatever. But anyway, so I went over to do it. I was just going to do it as a favor for 2020. I didn't even have a full specials, crew or lighting. We just sort of went over there. I had 2-man crew, and we were just going to shoot it for 2020. And it was one of those interviews that was incredibly raw, incredibly right out, as only Richard Pryor could be.
Right.
And so, we finish it, and Barbara says, this is going to be the third part of the first special. And of course, who gets to call Michael Douglas to tell him this but me? But fortunately for Michael, it actually worked out better for him.
Yeah, but he's one of the good guys. I mean, if you had to do this with someone.
Yeah, you are absolutely right.
He's one of the guys, right?
Yeah. He's one of the guys. And I was able to sort of say, and he actually agreed with us. I mean, the closer he did this interview to when the film was coming out, the better. So he did our next special. But anyway, so that special was a little different. It wasn't exactly what it was going to be, but it was a very raw interview.
So Phyllis,
some of the specials weren't exactly what you thought they were going to be sometimes.
Yeah.
You are incredibly articulate about all this, and it is fascinating to hear as an outsider. I also love the relationship advice you've given the nation this morning, which is always fire the boyfriend.
Right. No, you're right.
She'd made other moves based on the boyfriend too, by the way, which we will get to in a moment.
All right.
Oh God.
Thom has worked with Richard and was largely responsible for at least the beginnings of his movie career. So you knew him during this time, probably at the time when he was doing this interview.
Not only did I know him, we talked about whether it was advisable to do or not.
What was your advice? Did you think no?
I said get in touch with them.
Yeah.
But I didn't say call her direct. I didn't. I just assumed he'd have some agent do something, whatever.
But it was a real kind of a makeup interview, wasn't it? It was like a mea culpa kind of thing, right? Wasn't it?
It was a mea culpa. It was definitely one of the interviews. I mean, I remember one part of the interview when he says, all my career, I always thought I was running away from someone. I always thought they were going to catch me and figure out that I really was a fraud. And then he said, and then I realized I was running away from me.
Right.
It was me I was running away from. So, I mean, it was you're right. I mean, it was like being at a shrink's office, truthfully.
It was a combination of AA and a shrink, and Jennifer Pryor, his both fourth and seventh wife, was coming back into his life, and that stabilized him a lot. And things were getting better in Richard's life.
I'm going to go back a little further because the Barbara Walters specials, for those of you who love them, that you have before you here the 2 last executive producers of the Barbara Walters specials. Between us, we have 30 years of Barbara Walters specials. But we did not start the show. Phyllis, tell me, because you were closer to it than I was, how did the specials come about in the first place?
Well, I mean, they came about in the incredible negotiation and chutzpah of ABC approaching Barbara Walters, who at that time obviously was hugely successful in the Today Show. And they had they basically were a network that was, at that point, they, I think, had the courage to do this because things were beginning to turn around for ABC. Fred Silverman had really come in, and all of a sudden they were winning in primetime. They had Happy Days, and they had many other shows that were, winning. And I think that they wanted their entire, and I think, David was talking about this in an interview you did recently with David
Hartman,
about,
yeah, uh-huh.
yeah, David Hartman, about how they really wanted a full network, a full service network. So that meant they had to have a morning show. And that also meant that they had to have a newscast that was winning. And they had a newscast that was like distant third and basically just kind of also, yes, there's ABC.
Right.
So their idea was to approach Barbara to co-host with Harry Reasoner. And they had to make her an offer she couldn't refuse, because Barbara, as you know, Bill, she's not the most courageous person and doesn't like to take gambles, even though she obviously has.
She's very careful, very careful.
She's very, very careful.
She goes over it again and again and again. She asks everyone what they think. If you're sweeping the floor outside her office, she'll pull you in and say, what do you think about this? I'm about to move to ABC for $1 million or something, and what do you think? Right. She does it with everyone.
Right. Yes. So they basically offered her $1 million, which at the time was outrageous in some level, but not really outrageous. It was, I think she was making $700,000 at the Today Show and was about to be making $800,000 at the Today Show. So it wasn't like some insane thing. But in order for them to do that, they came up with the idea, the concept that they would pay her $500,000 for co-anchoring World News, and they would pay her $500,000 for 4 specials, primetime specials a year. And even though that was outrageous when it got leaked, and of course I'm sure NBC leaked it, but anyway, it was leaked, and it was very bad press for Barbara. It was all the $1 million baby, the $1 million lady, and in the end, it was 500 and 500,000, and in the end, in the long run, those specials, as we may, as we remember or don't remember, if some people won't, the Harry Reasoner, Barbara Walters combination was a disaster for a combination of many reasons. One, Harry didn't particularly want any co-anchor, whether it was Barbara Walters or anybody, and their relationship and their chemistry was non-existent. And those specials, which were kind of an afterthought, let's figure out a way to make sure she can make this amount of money. Those specials were her salvation.
Yeah, they ended up driving the train, didn't they? It's funny is that for those of you who don't know, a lot of times in order to sweeten a deal, they want you to anchor a GMA or the news or whatever, and we'll throw in, and they're almost like vanity things. It's like we'll give you 4 specials, you'll do a Christmas special and a this and that, and nobody ever has any really great expectations. I don't think that they had huge expectations for the Barbara Walters specials. There were, the only successful specials really at that stage had been the Bob Hope specials, I think, probably. This was just a way of getting her the money, but as you said, she knew that this was her only thing that was the only thing that was working for her, and that she had to make it work.
Yeah,
exactly.
I will say, Bill, also, having lived through the Barbara and Harry Reasoner idea, Harry Reasoner's dry as toast.
Yeah, he was.
He's just dry. And I'm sure he's a nice man, and I wish him well and all of his progeny. However, boy. Well,
here's the thing, and Phyllis,
it was never going to work.
It was never going to work. And also, it was a catch-22 thing. Harry Reasoner looked at her and said, "Well, here's a woman who's never covered a war, never covered a trial, a murder, a fire, and she's sitting next to me." And her argument would be women weren't allowed to cover any of those things.
Right.
Like how would she have gotten the experience in the first place? You know what I mean? So it bothered him. It bothered even if you watch the first newscast, which is almost impossible to watch. It's really horrifyingly difficult to watch because he can't stand that he's sitting next to her. Yeah. She gets an interview with, I think it's Anwar Sadat. Isn't it? Anwar Sadat?
Well, I don't remember, but it was someone.
I think it was Sadat, and Sadat goes, "How is the $1 million woman?" or whatever it is he says, and it's like you can just feel that room, how uncomfortable that table must have been at that time. Anyway, so we get to your tenure there, and I got to ask you this story because I know a little bit about it. But there's a particularly, Phyllis used to call me all the time. She'd say, what do you think about Patrick Swayze? He's a big star. And I'd be like, you mean the guy in the dancing movie? I don't really know. Says, no, I think he's going to be a big star. So, maybe. I don't know. And she would do that kind of stuff with me.
Right.
And
which you richly deserve.
Yes, I did. I was a great help. I'm sure I was a great help on all of it. Because that's what you do in the Barbara Walters special, by the way. You turn to everybody and go, Michelle Pfeiffer. Yes? No? And so, yeah, exactly. But you did an interview that is extremely famous or infamous with Sean Connery.
We did.
Tell me how that. First of all, it sounded like a great trip. It was one of these amazing Barbara Walters special stories. But tell me how that came about and what happened there.
Well, Sean Connery was he was in The Untouchables, which is with Kevin Costner, and he played an incredible character, and immediately got some of the best reviews of his career. And we decided to do Sean Connery just because there's so much to talk to Sean Connery about, not only obviously The Untouchables, but the James Bond and everything. So we went to Marbella, Spain, which is where he owned an incredibly beautiful home, and to do the interview because he wasn't going to be coming back to the States for a while. And we did the interview. We went to Marbella. He was the most amazing host. When we got there, the crew, of course, fell madly in love with him because he was great with the crew. He understood, got to get the crew on our side.
Right.
So he was wonderful with them. He said, I'm inviting everyone to dinner tonight. We're cooking dinner here. We're going to eat outside in my incredible outside looking at the ocean. And so what a great day. So we sit down to do the interview. Now, he had done an interview, and he had a great relationship with Barbara. I mean, the two of them, not even really sure if they had kind of known each other, but immediately they had a great rapport. And so we sit down to do the interview. In 1965, he had done a Playboy interview in which he had said, something, I'll paraphrase it, but something to, sometimes it's okay to hit a woman. So, and that interview got a lot of play in 1965. But 1965 was a lot different than 1986 or 7 when we did this. So Barbara asked him, would you still say that? You said this incredible thing in an interview in Playboy. And he looked straight at her and he basically said, yeah, I think there are times when a woman really deserves a smack across the face. And Barbara says, I don't like that. And he goes, well, that's the way I think. And you're asking me what I think. And that's what I think.
Yeah, let me interrupt you 1 second here because I've had to recut. Because if you do the Barbara Walters specials, every one of these interviews you cut and recut 1,000 times. Well, over the course of time, I've had publicists say, was that cut to make him look worse? And I say, no. In fact, would you like to see it? It's in fact, if you did anything, you tried to make him look better because he went on and on about it. But what he says, which is, he says, women like to go on and on about things. They want to have the last word, and you give them the last word, right. And it's not enough, and they continue, and that's when it's okay. And Barbara says, to do what? Is you give them a little hit. Not with
right.
with the open hand or something. I think he said.
With the open hand.
Not with a fist, just an open hand. Well, I mean, you can imagine. So anyway, I'll let you finish your story.
Well, yes, he did go on, and it was sort of like, and we were all like, like that. So, and in the break, I even went up to them, when we're in the break, and I said, surely you know how that must sound. And he goes, I know exactly how it must sound. That's how I feel. So I didn't feel. It certainly wasn't as if in any way we were making that look worse. In fact, I think we tried to cushion it a little bit.
Yeah.
And of course, the special ran, and we immediately get calls from his publicist, who, by the way, may I say, was not with us in Marbella, Spain. There wasn't any publicist with us, which I thought, well, that's a little bit why weren't they there? But the publicist calls both Barbara and me, screaming the next morning saying, you have just cost Sean Connery the Academy Award. Mm-hmm. Both of us looked at each other thinking, well, maybe we have. Who knows? I mean, the voters are swayed for all kinds of different reasons. So I remember that year distinctly, that Oscar show. Barbara, on the night of her Oscar show and the Oscars, she normally has a dinner party at her house, and we watch her special, and then we watch the Oscars, and we're all there together. And that night, when he did fortunately win for supporting in The Untouchables, supporting actor, Barbara and I both looked at each other and went, "Thank God,
Wow.
we have not cost him the Academy Award."
Well, I don't think anyone on the outside of the television experience has any idea how much impact what you guys do has on the world. People think it's just television. It's something on in your living room when you walk through, or in my case, 3 of them in my office, so that I have some clue what the hell's going on in the world, even though I'm hard to decipher these days. So here's what I want to know. Both of you are smart, articulate, risky people. Barbara Walters is a very cautious, careful duck. She's so cautious and careful that my mom was a giant Barbara Walters fan because she thought she was, quote, a lady, unquote. And how did you two end up working together? Where does this coalition of the delinquents happen?
Well, I can tell you from my point of view. Phyllis and I have something in common, which is that we're not from New York or L.A. Right. We're kind of as much as you can be on television. We're sort of regular people. Right. We've had like regular lives and families outside of that show business world, which is, I think, was helpful with Barbara to a certain degree.
Absolutely.
Don't you think? But I'm not exactly sure why. But it's something about we weren't. I don't know. We just weren't socialized in her world. So consequently, and I think also when I spoke to her, I would always say, I'm from Oklahoma, and I like X, and for some reason that meant something to her. Whereas if I'd said I'm from Manhattan and she would have been like, yeah. Tell me.
Right.
I need to hear what the folks are thinking, and I think that was beneficial. Don't you think?
I absolutely think it was beneficial. Basically had the same ideas about the same people and she needed to be broadened out a little bit. And certainly, I think we were younger. And so, when you say Patrick Swayze, why Patrick Swayze? Well, I think you kind of needed the delinquent to say, no, this film was supposed to be nothing. This film was supposed to be opened in theaters and go to video. And it has become a phenomenon. And I think her insular New York City world would not know necessarily why that film had become so huge and now is such a cult film. But she needed the prodding,
right?
And she certainly didn't need. God knows she and I know you and Bill. We had many, healthy arguments, sometimes unhealthy, but healthy arguments about no, you're all wrong. We got to do this, and then there were times when she really fought her battles and she really wanted. Her gut and her instinct is superb. No one had any instinct better than Barbara. But I think she needed, and she knew that. That's why it ultimately came to people like us.
So, Phyllis, you're from Virginia, is that right?
I'm from Virginia, and from the Blue Ridge Mountains part, not even.
So, give me the name of the town.
Oh. You will not know it, but maybe you will. Okay. Hillsville, Virginia.
Oh boy, I don't know it. And where is that?
You don't know it. It is southwest of Roanoke. It's like near Blacksburg. It's just a little, little town.
I know exactly where that is, though. Yeah. Okay. I grew up in North Carolina, so I had some, Virginia experiences. That's great. So you guys are both ducking my question. How did you meet? What was the first date? What happened here?
How did Bill and I meet?
Yeah.
We met on Good Morning America.
She was my boss.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
So she was. I think when I first met you, you were a supervising producer, senior producer. What would you have been at GM?
Probably supervising. Senior.
Senior supervising producer, and then she was the executive producer of Good Morning America, and it was actually kind of news when she took the job with Barbara, because you don't leave an EP of GMA is really, that's a huge job, obviously, gigantic. It's a day and night sort of job. Sure. So to go over to the Barbara Walters specials was considered unusual to say the least, wouldn't you say?
It was.
But it's not as unusual as leaving it 2 years later. That is the most unusual thing. So why did that happen exactly?
Well, I loved being executive producer of Good Morning America, and I had been basically at Good Morning America off and on since 1976. So let's talk about 10 years of being a writer, producer, field producer, then senior producer, then executive producer. I mean, it's 10 years of no sleep and crazy 24/7 kind of life. As much as I absolutely loved it, I think that I was really attracted by the idea of one of the great things about Good Morning America is, you know a little bit about so many things because you're doing 2 hours every morning. And I was really kind of looking forward to, in my life, being able to just really, deep dive into something and really spend time doing it. And I really kind of was interested and intrigued by Primetime and doing Primetime specials. And I've been doing morning TV for a really long time.
Sure.
So, it was a controversial choice, but it was kind of worked and was the right thing for me in the long run. It was absolutely the right thing for me.
Sure.
The reason I left is a little bit, I think, the reason that Bill ultimately needed to find and create with Barbara The View. The specials are great. They are tremendous amounts of pressure. You've got to come up with 4 specials a year. That doesn't sound like very much, but booking these people is not that easy.
Oh, yeah.
And secondly, you're also booking people not to just book for booking's sake. You have to say to this person, this is a long interview. I need to know that you're coming to play.
Yes.
And if you're not coming to play, if this isn't the right time, then we should not do it. Right. So, you're expecting a tremendous amount from them also. So what happened was, while we were doing the specials, Barbara was married to Merv Adelson, who ran Lorimar.
Yes.
And so I was always out. I was out there a lot. We were shooting out there, and I was in Bel Air a lot. And at one point, Merv said, I think it would be a great idea if Barbara, made-for-TV movies were really huge at that point.
Right.
And I think it would be a great idea, and this was Merv's idea, to basically do some, have Barbara introduce a made-for-TV movie and then have her interview the real people afterwards. And I said, brilliant. And I said, you know what? I'll come up with 8 to 10 stories that I think would be great made-for-TV movies that then Barbara can do. And Barbara can introduce them, they run, and then she does the interview. So I came up with 8 or 10 stories. And one of which was Switched at Birth, which later Barbara did do as an hour, which had huge ratings. But anyway, I came up with, and my pitch partner, so we went to ABC. Obviously, we were going to pitch to ABC first because we worked for ABC. And my pitch partner, who worked at Lorimar and was an executive at that time, was Les Moonves. Right. And so obviously we were pitching to Brandon Stoddard and we were pitching to Ted Harbert. They were like the 2 big people in entertainment. So we did the pitch, which basically Les Moonves did a pitch. And then every once in a while I'd say, and tell them a story. And then I'd jack the story. And they on the spot greenlit it and said, we will absolutely do this. I go back, we're excited. We tell Merv, we tell Barbara. And then, of course, the Barbara thing happens, Bill. Barbara then, starts second-guessing it. She starts questioning it. Yeah. She's like, but I'm nervous we don't know anything about made-for-TV. And I said, no, but that's what Les Moonves and these people do know about. And they will hire the people, we'll come up with the stories, and we know that we can do incredible interviews with the real people because you kind of always want to see the real people after seeing a movie like that. Anyway, in the end, Barbara backed out and decided she didn't want to do it. And I think it was at that point, it was like what you were feeling. The specials are great, but I just kind of wanted something more. And I was very excited about this project. And I think it was just then where I'm like, I just don't know if I can just only do these specials for the next however many years. And at that point, I got an offer from NBC for something that then Barbara said, you can't go to NBC until at least you meet with Roone. And that was when I met Roone and obviously moved over into development for ABC News. But that's, I think if we had done those movies, I would have stayed there a longer time. I just needed another challenge. That's all.
You're hitting on something that you're absolutely right, by the way. The specials are the best job in television.
Yes.
But it's the same job every time. So what happens is there's a certain boredom that sets in, and you start thinking, oh, and part of it is that it's what you just said. People assumed they were easy to book. They're impossible to book. Right. You know, I had Jennifer Aniston on The View 10 years ago or something, and I walked into her dressing room and I said, you know, I've been trying to get you to be on the Barbara Walters specials since 1992 or something, like whatever the heck it was.
Right.
And she says, I'm not old enough yet. And I said, what are you talking about? She says, I don't have the wealth of experience. I don't have all the things I want to say, but there'll be a time when, well, obviously there's no time. It never happened. But it shows you what people think. It has to be the right movie, the right moment in their life. They have to be married to the right person. It became impossible. And it was very important to stay on top of the next thing and not go back and interview Bette Midler again, who I love, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah, I love her, and I understand why Barbara's comfortable with that, because they have good conversations and everything, but that's not what the nature of the show is. So anyway.
So just for the listening audience here, as I understand the story, and I may have it wrong, so since I have the two horses that made this all happen, I need to know, is it true that you recommended this maniac to do these specials?
Well, it is absolutely true. And the answer to that is that Barbara said, I really don't like this. I really hate this. But I understand, sort of. You want a new challenge, but you cannot leave until you find the replacement. I cannot go through this again. And I said, without hesitation whatsoever, I said, I have absolutely the right person. I really do. I knew Bill had an incredible range.
Yes.
I knew Bill had traveled the world with David Hartman. I knew he knew exactly, how to deal with talent. And David Hartman is an easy talent, but on the other, compared to many, many people. But I knew that he knew the nuances and all the kinds of things that one has to do in order to, work with people who are on the air, because the people who are on the air have a tremendous amount of, of their own challenges and tremendous amounts of pressure on them. And you need a producer next to you that can sort of understand that and deal with that and help you with that. And so I basically said, his name is Bill Geddie, and you are going to absolutely love him. He's going to be better. In fact, I said, he's a better producer than me, Barbara. So please don't anyway. So what I don't know, I can't remember your specific first meeting with her.
It's a...
Let's talk about that, Bill. I'd like to know what kind of dance or performance you put on to convince Barbara that you were better than Phyllis and going to make her life.
Well, she called me up when David Hartman left Good Morning America. I went with him. He said, we're going to do documentaries, and we did some fascinating stuff. It was really good, and I was there for, I think, 2 years or something. But it's like everything else, it's like the things we did weren't watched by that many people. It was hard to get people interested in them. We did good things that were not seen, which everybody who's ever done this, you've done movies that weren't seen.
Please,
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So it's not the greatest thing. And he was at a different phase of his life. He was like moving into the back nine somewhere. And so she called up and said, do you want my job? And I said, are you kidding me? Everybody wants your job. And you said, well, you have to win it. You have to win her over. It's not just yours. You have to go in there and win her over. And you said, if I remember correctly, everybody at 2020 wants the job.
They did. They did.
Everybody at 2020 wants the job. They all have relationships with her. She likes many of them. I assume she didn't like all of them, but she likes many of them. And you're going to have to go in and get it. So I go in there, and we talk, and she's like, but are you persuasive, and can you do this, and can you do this? And I realized that being the executive producer of the Barbara Walters specials is like really a field producer's job. It's not actually a. It's not like you're not doing some big show on a soundstage or something like that. It's a glorified field producer job. Wouldn't you say, to a certain degree? That is to say that it's multiple cameras, but it's a lot of writing. You know, it's all in the field. It's like, you're in a different.
It's all in the field and the edit room.
It's all in the field and the edit room. So it's
Right.
like it's a field producer's job, which is basically what I was. Still, what I still see myself as a field producer primarily, and so we go through this whole thing, and you had told me one piece of information which I don't think you remember, but this one piece of information changed my career. You said she hates to fire people. It's a huge issue for her. This is why it's going to be hard for you to get the job, because she wants to know that she can get rid of you if she doesn't like you, and that's a big issue for her. And it's easier at 2020, she just pushed them back into the fold. And so about halfway through this meeting, I could see that she was like, I don't know, why should I give it to you? I don't know you. Blah, blah. Barbara has no unspoken thought, by the way.
Okay.
Everything she thinks comes right out her mouth. So, which is great in some ways, because you always know where you stand, right? And it dawned on me that she was concerned about getting rid of me if it didn't work out. And I had this brainstorm at this moment in the meeting. It never occurred to me before, which is to say to her, you know what? You don't know me, and I understand that, but we're about to do this 2-hour show, and that's what it was, the 2-hour show, the 50th Barbara Walters special. I'm going to have to sit with you, get to know you, write all these opens and closes for this 2-hour show. It's a giant project. I'm going to have to see everything you've ever done with the specials, which was a pretty good catalog even by then.
Right.
And I said, here's the deal. Consider me fired at the end of the special. She said, what do you mean? He says, consider me gone. That I'm gone. It's all right, and I appreciate it. It means so much to me to be able to work with you for this 2-hour special. I'll go on. I'll find another job. It's just that one special. And you could see the relief come over her. They're like,
she did have a phobia about that.
Yeah,
yes.
This relief came over and says, all right, so you'll be gone. I said, I'll be gone at the end of the special, and it's fine. It'll be great working with you, and we'll do this wonderful show together, and I'll be on my way. And about halfway through the special, she says to me, what are you working on for the next special? And I said, well, I didn't think I was. She says, you can't just work on one special at a time, Bill. You have to stay on top of things. What are you doing? And I'm like, and literally that's the last conversation I had about employment with Barbara Walters for 27 years.
I love that. Wow. That is hilarious.
But she did say something funny to me, and I assume that she must have said it to you. She said, here's the way I work. If I don't feel strongly and you feel strongly, you win. If I feel strongly and you don't feel strongly, I win. But if I feel strongly and you feel strongly, I win. That's what she said to me.
She said the same thing.
and I said to her, and she, I think, a few years before we left, I brought that up to her, and she said, "You always win." She says, I never got. I said, we both feel strongly about a lot of things, and you end up winning, which is true. Because I guess I felt it more strongly, or I pushed harder, or something.
Right.
But not always. By the way, there were times when I did not win, but most of the time I won. Because she respected that I had to put it together. And that was the amazing thing about Barbara, by the way. She had a great deal of respect for producers. She realized that, she was not one of those people that's there at midnight looking over your shoulder. That's
Right.
not how she works.
Right.
She figured you had a job. You need to write it. I'll rewrite it. You need to cut it. I'll recut it. But you need to get your licks in and do your job. You're a professional, and I will edit from there. And didn't you like that about her?
She was totally like that. I think that was probably because she had been a producer. And I think that she really respected, that job as a producer. And she also probably, provided for us what probably hadn't been provided for her, which is let me get my first cut. At least let me get my first cut, and then we can talk about it. And I think that, she did have a lot of respect for that. And she was, I think, Bill, you would say, one of the best producers I've ever worked with. I mean, her gut and her instinct is pretty amazing.
What she could really do, Thom, is she could look at remember these interviews went forever. They were hour, 2 hours. They were just stacks of transcripts, and she would just tear through them like a maniac. And it was never any resting with her. You know, you'd get on the plane, you were all dead tired, and you'd sit down on that plane for that red eye, you know, or something. And she'd be like, "Let's do the cut. Let's do the first cut." You'd be like, "Oh no."
It was totally. I mean, I'd be like, "Can't I have a Bloody Mary?"
Exactly.
3 days. And by the time we landed in New York City, we had basically a paper cut of the interview.
Right.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I love that. So, guys, I don't have any television experience to speak of, but I suspect that a network is not very different than a movie studio, fraught with politics, lots of agendas, lots of competing interests. So in that environment, how did you guys manage Barbara in that environment? And did she have other people that she listened to or trusted who became gadflies in your life?
Well, I mean, I think laughingly, Bill and I could tell you that the cleaning lady might have told her that she didn't like this part of an interview and we better take it out. So when you say gadfly, it could range from the head of, William Morris to the cleaning lady, and she would be second guessing things. But yeah, I think the politics. I mean, Barbara was a consummate politician. She had been in and out of, obviously with NBC and ABC. She always knew the owners. She always knew she obviously had. When I was with her, Lee Stevens, who was her agent as sort of her person that she could always turn to. But, the politics are absolutely always there. The interesting part of that is her specials were so successful and ABC Entertainment so wanted them because there were many years where her 4 specials made the difference about whether they were number 1 or number 2 for the year. Wow. That's how much her specials could deliver.
That's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, really. So in some ways, if Barbara, they were sort of pulled back a little bit. If Barbara's specials, they just wanted her to keep doing the specials.
Right.
So the only hassle or rub would be when Barbara would say, I can't keep doing these specials. I can't keep doing 4 a year. I can't keep, and, because they wanted more and more and more, and they didn't care what it took to get them. So did you find that to be true, Bill?
Yeah, not only that, they wanted us to recut them as many ways as possible. So I ended up doing things like, Barbara's interviews on love, or, I don't know. I'm trying to think of all the different things that we did.
Well, I remember you did one, which I thought was great, the mistakes.
All the mistakes, 30 mistakes in 30 years. And boy, you had to dig deep for that one. By the way, the Sean Connery thing was one of those.
Right. And the Jimmy Carter Be Kind to Us.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened was, over the course of this time, was that when she starts these specials, she does the special has Jimmy Carter and Barbra Streisand. Our basic is the first special she does in 76 or something like that, maybe somewhere right in there. And they very quickly learned that nobody cared about Jimmy Carter, and they all wanted to watch Barbra Streisand. So over the course of time, it just became a celebrity thing, which I think irked her. I think that she wanted to do more substantial things. So what happened is, and I wanted to do anything other than 3 movie stars. I was even doing things like at the end where I was doing like, you'll interview the Ninja Turtles for 4 minutes, or Shrek or something. I'll do anything. Just do something to bust it up, to have four or five things, anything, just to move this along. Because people's tastes were different, right? I mean, they didn't just sit still for that length of time. I mean, I can remember when I was a cameraman, and I would buff the floors in Oklahoma City. And I would buff those floors, and I'd look up, and I saw Barbara Walters with Dolly Parton. And I turned off the buffer, and I sat there, and I realized, I want to watch this interview with Dolly Parton. And I realized, oh my gosh, it's really, really long. Like, I can't sit through this. This is like 20 minutes long. So I think that things changed over the course of time, which is why I developed 10 Most Fascinating People, and that's another story. But
Right.
but what I loved, and we're wrapping it up soon, so don't worry. We'll get to it. Is that the thing people say? What did you learn from Barbara Walters? And I always say the same thing: do it now. That's what I got from Barbara Walters. Do it now. You walk in and say, maybe we should interview Michelle Obama. Get the White House on the phone. Let's do it now. That's
she did.
Do it now. I mean, I'm because that's not my nature. My nature is to think about it, and I'll push it off. She was on top of it right then and there. Don't you think?
Oh, totally. I mean, to the point that there would be times where I'd be like, trying to figure out what am I going to say when she got Michelle Obama, White House people on the phone? I mean, it would just be now. Let's do it now.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. I've got to say, Phyllis, it is really an honor today to have somebody on this show who's actually been a successful boss of Bill Geddie.
Yeah, that's right. Very successful boss.
We are all in Rancho Mirage today. We are declaring this Phyllis Day.
Phyllis Day.
On the because this is a big event.
Let me say one thing about in addition to appreciating that she gave me my career. And I really like Phyllis a lot. And here's what I think is funny about Phyllis, and you may not like this, but Phyllis is not an ambitious person. This is what I find weird about you. She's had huge jobs, but I do not think of you as an incredibly, like one of these like tough, backbiting, like I've got to get. What happened with her, I think, is what should happen with every good person, is that whenever she said something, you knew that she was speaking about what she thought was best for the show, the company, the whatever. And people believed that.
Right.
Because it was true. She wasn't trying to undercut anybody. She wasn't trying to say, look at me. She was just trying to make everything better. And I think that the people understood that, and that's why she rose through the ranks so successfully.
Well, I thank you for that. I will say that, there were different times when people say, you're this and you're that. And I said, but deep down, I'm really a beach bum, which obviously now I'm in Florida. But the truth is that every time I made a move, whether it was interpreted as ambitious or cutthroat, I don't think I was ever cutthroat, but ambitious or really trying to move here or really trying to, but there were people who, gee, I wish I had that job. And no, Phyllis got it. She moved, but I will say that my motivation for every single move that I made was really, I just wanted a new experience. I wanted something to do that's different. I mean, I wanted to go from, being a line producer for Good Morning America, and I took that weird step of then becoming a film producer. And like people were like, why would you do that? And I said, because I want to learn how to be a film producer.
Sure.
And, why did you go from Good Morning America to the specials? Because I wanted to produce Primetime. I wanted to see what that's like. I wanted to learn that. And like when I went to news, I think that the great part of my being in news is that Room sort of appreciated that I just wanted to explore and do lots of different things. I wasn't just one thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about, I just wanted the experience and tried to create a situation where we could all produce shows that we really loved and liked. And that went pretty far for a long time. But.
Well, I will say as an outsider, watching these specials over a lifetime, which I've done, and now knowing both of you, I've got to say, you two guys not only changed the face of television, you changed the way the culture related to television and news. And the range is astonishing. And I'm not sure about the Ninja Turtles. I didn't catch that piece of the internet.
It was really good.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Really, really good.
But
my finest moment.
But I will say the two of you had the two of you had a huge impact and still do in your respective ways.
Thank you. And Phyllis, thank you for being with us. Is there anything you would like to add? Anything about how wonderful I was at taking over your job for you? Anything you want to throw in on the end of this?
No, I think we've covered it all.
Phyllis is the greatest person. I really appreciate you doing this for us. This is Bill Geddie with Thom Mount again, reminding you that there are no shortcuts in Hollywood, but there are many, many detours. This is Bill and Thom advising you to take Fountain. Thanks, Phyllis.
Thank you. Bye-bye.